Coming up on This Week in Tech, Molly Wood, John Dvorak, and Chris Mitchell join me as we fill in for Leo Laporte and get to the bottom of this whole net neutrality dispute between Comcast and Level 3, try to figure out what the heck is going on with Wikileaks, and introduce you to the feeder net. You got to watch to find out about that.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Audio bandwidth for This Week in Tech is provided by Winamp for Android, the ultimate media player for your desktop and Android device, featuring wireless sync. Download it free at winamp.com/Android. Video bandwidth for TWiT is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is TWiT, episode 277, recorded on December 5th, 2010. Throw Momma in the tube. This episode of TWiT is brought to you by Ford and the new 2011 Ford Edge. It grabs attention as well as it grabs the road and features available My Ford Touch to connect you to your vehicle in new and innovative ways. The 2011 Ford Edge, drive one this week at a Ford dealer near you. And by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to publish a high-quality website or blog. For a free trial and 10% off the lifetime of your new account, go to Squarespace.com and use the offer code TWiT. And by Gotomeeting. Improve your conference calls and keep everyone on the same page when you share your screen with Gotomeeting. For your free 30-day trial, visit Gotomeeting.com/TWiT. It's time for This Week in Tech, episode 277. I'm Tom Merritt, filling in for the French Leo Laporte. He is at Le Web right now, enjoying himself, visiting the Eiffel Tower, eating baguettes, probably drinking wine, while we slave away here in his absence. But we have a great panel for you today. Starting in the studio this time, Mr. John Dvorak. You had some booze to pick up. That's why you dropped by. Is that right?
John C. Dvorak to you.
That's
and
right.
Yes, as a matter of fact, because I know these guzzlers around here would wipe this thing out if I left it here another week.
ChannelDvorak.com if you would like to learn more about why you need to put that C in the middle and other things.
Yeah, is this for channel?
Right.
JohnChannelDvorak.com.
John Dvorak, his middle name is Channel. Also joining us from CNET, executive editor, is that right?
Yeah.
Molly Wood,
you know.
Host of Buzz Out Loud, host of the Buzz Report. I'm just going to list everything you do now.
We could be here a while.
We will be
Don't
here.
have that kind of time.
Hey, it's great to be doing a show with you again.
I know. I missed you. I wish I was in the studio, but it's too rainy and I can't go out.
It's too rainy yet. John C. Dvorak came here.
That's right.
Yeah,
but again, there's
there
a
was
reason
booze
as we
involved. If
expressed
you had told
earlier.
me about the booze.
See, that was our mistake. We shouldn't have told.
Yeah.
We should have told you.
Should have.
And also joining us, the director of the Telecommunications as Commons Initiative, Mr. Christopher Mitchell. Welcome, sir.
Howdy.
Very good to have you with us, especially because we have some network neutrality news in this week.
Yes, I'm looking forward to talking about it.
All right. Well, let's do then. Level 3 Communications issued a statement beginning of last week, around Monday, saying that Comcast was going to block them for if they didn't pay up. And they said that they should be having a peering arrangement between the two. A peering, if you don't know, means that I send you a bunch of traffic, you send me a bunch of traffic, we call it even because we're both big players on the internet. Comcast says no, Level 3, mostly because they have a deal with Netflix, is going to send us a lot more traffic than we're sending back to them. This is not a peering agreement. This is a what would you call it, Chris? They're trying to say it's a transit agreement or an interconnection agreement.
Right. I think it's actually technically still peering. It's not settlement-free peering anymore. What will be the change? And there's a lot of facts that are in dispute still, and actually probably will remain that way for a long time because there's no real mechanism of resolving this. It's a somewhat new problem that's arisen in terms of how things have been traditionally done and apparently how they'll be done from here on out.
So the FCC says they're going to look at this. Comcast says this is just Level 3 trying to get by without paying for stuff. Level 3 says no, this is Comcast trying to put a squeeze and make people pay twice for something. What do you think, John?
Oh, let's get to the basics here. Comcast sees Netflix as a threat to its basic business, which is selling movies on pay-per-view, very similar to what Netflix does. And if you have a Comcast account, there's all these opportunities to rent movies, or exactly the same way Netflix offers them. And they are of the opinion, I can imagine how somebody could get to this perspective. They're of the opinion that, golly, you know, we give these people this great bandwidth, and then they're screwing us by taking advantage of it, because something up to 20% of all internet traffic during the TV watching hours is supposed. I don't believe this totally, but they keep saying it.
I've heard that stat.
Which is 20% of all internet traffic during TV viewing hours is Netflix. And so Comcast sees it as an infringement on their basic business model, and they don't see any reason why if they don't have to let them have the traffic, why should they? At least they're not throttling it.
Yet,
exactly. Well,
that's a good point.
It gets a little more complicated, I think. And I think one of the interesting things that we can say here is that even if Comcast is acting on its best behavior, and that this isn't inevitable that they would have to charge level 3, that even then it has a really broad consequences for the future of internet video, because Comcast customers will always be guided then towards Comcast's selection, the Fancast, rather than Netflix. And so Netflix will always have a disadvantage relative to Comcast.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no question that level 3 did come at Comcast with a much greater than expected traffic proposition, kind of all of a sudden. And I buy that, you know, that they were able to negotiate a good deal with Netflix by promising potentially a price that they couldn't deliver, knowing that they had this traffic sharing agreement or peering agreement with Comcast. But there's no question that Comcast wouldn't probably be responding this way if it weren't Netflix traffic we were talking about. And there's also no question that Netflix or Comcast is in a really dangerous position in terms of putting down the hammer and saying we're not going to carry your traffic, because people don't have the competition to go elsewhere if they do that.
Well, you know, I think you brought up an interesting point, and I think what you say is possible that there's something, because generally speaking with these sorts of news stories, there's something missing from the story we don't know about, and it's quite likely that Comcast, you know, got wind of these guys, probably like you said, promising more than they can deliver, and in the process having to deliver more than they, or to deliver what they promised, they have to screw Comcast. Comcast then decides that, you know, they got wind of it, or there's some back channeling going on. They say, this is ridiculous. These guys can't do that. Well, let's just charge them. I mean, I'm convinced that I'm not to defend Comcast, which is Comcastic, by the way, but
by definition,
it's. I'm not completely thinking that
this long.
There may not be a bad guy element here. I mean, it may be trying to defend themselves against some nefarious dealing by the other guys. I mean, I'm not totally, you know, jump on Comcast evildoers.
If this is something where Comcast is trying to move and make a big change, this is obviously the worst time for them to do it. And so for me, that's one of the best pieces of evidence to suggest that probably it is a pretty gray issue. It's fairly nuanced. There's no bad guy. But I have to say that I think the consequences are pretty dire. And so it has to be dealt with intelligently. And I'm glad the FCC is getting involved. We'll see how it gets resolved.
Are you going to personally, because I don't want to do this, are you going to personally listen to the C-SPAN testimony, because you know it's going to be on C-SPAN?
No, I won't be. Actually, most of my work really focuses on local and state levels. We follow the FCC when we have to, but what I want to say is that right now all of these peering arrangements are done in secret. No one has any idea what's going on, and it's only probably because Comcast is in the limelight with this merger with NBC that Level 3 decided to try and make it a public issue. Would be my guess, because they thought that it would help their ends.
Yeah, from what I understand, what Comcast reacted to was Level 3 said, we need about 26 more connections. And they said, well, we can give you 6 in our current peering arrangement. And Level 3 said, and we'd have to charge you to do the rest of them. And that's when Level 3 freaked out. Now, I'm wondering if this was not Comcast, if this was a different ISP that didn't have a cable television service and didn't, I don't know if there's any of those left, frankly. But,
I was going to say those don't exist.
But, you know, in some imaginary world where it was just an ISP without a conflict of interest, Chris, do you have a sense of what would be the normal reaction, and why haven't we ever seen this kind of dispute before?
Well, that's a question that I'll jump at, and I'll do my best to answer, but I'll tell you my expertise is not in this. So The way I would look at it is that it seems to me Comcast would be benefiting from having a direct connection here. The worst thing that could happen to Comcast is if they had to pay someone to get access to Netflix content, because I'm a Comcast user. I want to watch Netflix. I watch a lot of Netflix. And there's millions others like me. And so if Comcast has to pay someone else to get access to that, that would be the worst scenario. For Comcast to get it for free seems like a decent scenario, because someone's going to be delivering that content to Comcast somehow. So in my mind, there's got to be facts here that we just aren't privy to, and it may just be a case of both sides just trying to use the public limelight to get an edge in their negotiations. But again, I just think it's the worst time for Comcast to do this.
It's a really bad time for Comcast to be. I mean, I can only assume, right, that negotiations must have gotten to a pretty ugly place for Level 3 to take this step. Like, it's pretty bold for Level 3 to come out and issue a press release and say Comcast, say in essence, Comcast is violating net neutrality. And whether it's true or not, like, it seems like it was clearly an exaggeration on the part of Level 3, but it's such a bold move and such a kind of bizarre public action, given, like you said, that most of these peering agreements are conducted in secret, that it really does make you wonder, how hard was the ball that Comcast was actually playing here?
Right, and actually, my interest is mostly in local community fiber networks, citywide networks. And what I'd be interested in also is if Level 3 has all this power of Netflix, do they have the ability to just force any smaller provider to do what they want? And so I don't know enough about these agreements to really go further in that, but I think there's some real issues in terms of the market power of the players involved. And I really hope we can just talk briefly about this post. I don't know if someone can put it in the chat room, but you found a blog post from an ISP called IP House, which put some numbers to this, and I think really was well written. IP House is a provider here in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, and they're terrific people, and they know a lot about peering, obviously, because it's what they do. And one of the things that they pointed out was that you cannot route around Comcast to provide the requested content to Comcast subscribers. And so a lot of the peering agreements typically are more sort of two networks that are exchanging backbone traffic, as opposed to one network delivering it directly to the subscribers. So that's another area in which this is different, and why I think the FCC is getting involved rather than just saying work it out amongst yourselves.
I got to thank Kendrick Erickson who sent me that link. It was a really eye-opening link from IP House. But what I want to know is if Level 3 said, no, we're not going to pay you, Comcast, would there be no way for a Comcast subscriber to receive that traffic? It couldn't come some other way?
You should be able to go around the horn.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel, but it does seem like this blog post is saying that they can't, and that is what caused Level 3 to raise the alarm in the first place. So that even though they may have raised an exaggerated alarm, they were in a position where Comcast was saying, okay, well, we're not going to,
like I would
say to my 3-year-old, then all right, I'm not going to carry your traffic, which is like a pretty terrifying concept, because you have to admit that however this ends up in the future, Comcast is a company that's very familiar with and comfortable with the idea of offering content packages to its subscribers. And there's no reason to think that they don't, down the line, really want to offer that in terms of internet service too.
I think it could turn into a Cablevision sort of situation like we had with the baseball in terms of, and I think it was Fox.
Yeah.
And the question is who's going to blink first, right? So if Level 3 and Comcast have this fight, and Comcast won't allow our subscribers, me, to get my Netflix content, the question is who blinks first. I'm not switching to anyone else. Comcast is the only one that offers real broadband in my area of the world. And Netflix clearly would be losing a lot if it loses access to millions of customers. And so I think that would be terrible for everyone. The only way that I would think that if Comcast is not going to accept peering from Level 3, if they fight about this, would be if Level 3 was sending it across another network that is peering to Comcast, which would be just totally inefficient and really defeat the purpose of the CDN to begin with.
Right. Okay. So it could be possible, but it would not be ideal.
It might be herky jerk.
Yeah. Level 3 has already agreed to pay, as I understand it, too. So I'm not sure with all of this putting out of the facts and the press releases, are they just hoping to get legislative action, or they just want to embarrass Comcast? Or, I'm not sure what result they're looking for.
I think they're probably trying to force some legislative action and also to shine the light on the NBC merger, because that content delivery conflict of interest is just going to keep coming up. I feel like there's no question that is a scary issue for anybody who's doing business with with Comcast, it's got to be scary for Netflix. And I suspect that they were just trying to kind of keep that pending merger in the spotlight as much as they could. And hopefully get the FCC to just go ahead and reclassify broadband too, just as a happy,
as a side light.
Yeah.
It's a terrible precedent for the future of level 3 if this is what they want to move into is CDN, presumably with more than just Netflix. So I think they want to resolve it and try and get back to an arrangement where they have, a free peering arrangement.
Brian Monroe in the chat room says they could peer with public peering locations, but it would not work well with that load that Netflix delivers. That's kind of the key there. All right. Well,
by the way, I have a solution for the whole thing.
You do? What's the solution, John?
Comcast should buy Netflix.
I think that would clear a lot of the problems out of the way.
All of them.
And Comcast should probably buy level 3 too.
No, if I was Comcast, I'd buy Netflix and screw level 3.
And screw level 3. Cancel the deal.
You can kick it around the federal government hearings for another couple of years where they figure out if it's okay or not, and eventually approve it because they only ever approve these mergers, it seems.
We'll pay you your money, Comcast, but we're going to soil your deal for NBC. That may be a good thing for Comcast.
When is that thing going to close?
It's never going to close now. The FCC is going to constantly be referring to this and looking it over. It's going to last forever. Do you think that's a good thing for Comcast, though? NBC's not doing so well.
Oh, well, they just need something to kind of balance their business, and I think a content company is the one to do it with. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Because then they're weak, so they can get them.
It's the only thing you were allowed to watch.
That's right.
The only thing you're allowed
they have
to watch.
plenty of channels. Why do you need more channels?
Brian
They've
Williams.
got Bravo and Sci-Fi.
Yeah, they got all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, Universal movies.
Right.
Why would you want to go out of their walled garden? Be like the NBC, be like AOL on steroids.
I want to watch Letterman. I don't know. I want to watch Jon Stewart. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to go outside the walled garden.
Yeah, I have to admit that I have to pull a little Alex Lindsay here and note that I really don't know what NBC produces. I'm too long removed, I think, from watching live television and caring about that. It tends to show up on a device in front of me and I watch it. So for me, I'm not even sure what I would be missing if NBC just disappeared tomorrow.
Facebook is overhauling their profile pages. There's an interview with Mark Zuckerberg on this evening's 60 Minutes where they'll be going over this. It's Zuckerberg's first appearance on TV since the release of the Social Network movie. And it looks like the overhauled profile pages will be interesting. They're going to have photos elevated up to the top, added icons to all of your interests so it's more visual. Your vital statistics, things like your relationship and your job and your hometown are all up at the top. It's a more readable situation. But the most interesting thing to me about this is they're letting you opt in. Instead of doing what they've always done in the past, which is just pile it on you and force you into it, they're saying, you know what? You want to go into it? Go to this URL. We'll ease people into it.
I'm suspicious.
Why are you suspicious, Molly Wood?
That's just not how they roll. There's got to be something else going on.
What are you, Snoop Dogg?
Yeah. Why are you putting me on Front Street for my lingo, Dvorak?
Yeah, I prefer the old Facebook. I'm not
suspicious at all. I just feel like flabbergasted by the fact that they're not opting people into this.
Well, maybe they learned finally. Maybe they said, you know what, this hasn't worked for us the past 50 times. Maybe we'll change.
No, that's the thing is I prefer if they didn't learn. I prefer when they're stumbling around because I think they're a real threat to the future of the open internet. Horrified when I see all these commercials that pop up and say their Facebook address of a company rather than the www, the internet address. I think it gives Facebook way too much power over what people are seeing and doing on the internet. So when Facebook gets savvy and starts doing things better, I sort of grow more fearful for the future of the internet.
Well, yeah, if Leslie Stahl tries to hammer Zuckerberg on that apparently in the 60 Minutes interview, like, do you want to own the internet? Do you want to have everyone inside of Facebook? And he kind of doesn't answer it, of course.
Says yes.
Yeah.
Because the answer is yes.
Okay.
I mean, what's he going to say?
Are you offering it?
No. Who would want that?
I'll take that.
Why would I? Prepare yourselves for the inevitable freak out is all I have to say about the Facebook profile pages.
Well, that's the thing, right? None of these changes seem all that dramatic, but you know people are going to freak out about it.
Yep.
Well, especially you said the article said you can't go back once you've started it, right. So that'll probably be the freak out now.
Even though I opted in, I want to go back to the way it was. Change is always dangerous.
My advice: stay off Facebook.
I knew there was a trap. I'm just saying.
Stay off Facebook. There's a piece of advice for you.
Is there going to be a new social networking site at Dvorak.org?
You know,
You're
there's
going to run a
plenty of-
diaspora server?
You know, there's a thing called email, there's Twitter, there's blogs, there's a million things you can do if you want to, if you have to constantly be in touch with everybody every minute of the day just in case.
Go to facebook.com/about/profile if you want to risk the new thing. You click get the new profile down at the bottom, and that is the one-way ticket.
The one-way ticket to doom.
To doom. But people, I mean, yeah, it really is just a new profile. It's not that big of a deal. But you're right, Molly. People are going to freak out about it.
They will. Sure.
What they're rightly freaking out about is WikiLeaks. This week was all WikiLeaks all the time.
Who's rightly freaking out specifically?
Hillary Clinton.
Well,
Right.
she should be a little concerned.
Pretty much every diplomat who's mentioned in the gossipy cables. Why are they called cables, by the way? Does anybody
that's what
know?
I like to know.
Yes, actually.
Hey,
that
there's a
was
cable
the-
just
Thank you,
came
Molly.
in.
Can you answer that?
The cable, the reason that they're called cables was in page 4 of the New York Times article, and nobody got that far. But it was like...
Is this
I didn't
because
either.
it's
Somebody told
boring?
me. 9,000 words in, they explained that it is basically just an archaic term for what used to, in fact, be literal cables. So it's sort of like how you might still say memo.
Or album?
Album.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's that. They are now obviously electronic transmissions, but they're still referred to as cables.
So it's
Cables.
just lingo.
And there's some formatting, you know, like if you format a special letter. So there is some government formatting that includes the secrecy level and maybe like who it's addressed to and, you know, a special government salutation and all of that kind of makes it like a cable instead of an email.
Okay, I think we've heard enough.
Dearest friend, I want to swab your cheek.
Good, because I have to go.
I hope a lot of people saw that Secretary of Defense Gates was not freaking out and trying to say that this really wasn't as big of a deal as everyone's made it up to
You know,
be.
Gates was the coolest cucumber in the whole thing. Is almost as though he is behind the whole deal. Just thinking. And you
really
can watch
wants to
No Agenda
retire.
or listen to NoAgendaShow.com.
Do you think he gets up in the morning and starts by leaking things?
Well, to the bathroom, maybe. Are you talking about that?
No, just like before he goes to work.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I'm going to leak a couple of memos.
So here's
Could have bladder problems, too, is resulting in leaking.
the first big issue that hit the tech world was Amazon kicked them off after they started getting a denial of service attack. Although Amazon claims they got kicked off because they didn't have the right to publish this material, which I think
What
is
is
bunk.
Amazon, the judge and jury here? Give me a break.
Amazon's terms of
Well, they
service say you can't put up
claimed-
material that you don't have the right to publish.
How do they know this?
Although they don't not
It's
have
government
the right to publish.
government documents generally
Like,
are
it is
public domain.
It's illegal. Yeah, and it is arguably. I mean, the rightful freakout thing has kind of shifted in my mind because arguably this has become a little bit of a free speech issue, maybe a big one because WikiLeaks. You know, you could argue that the Wall Street Journal never had the right to publish any of the Watergate stuff that it got, but it has long been protected speech to.
You
even
mean the
if you
Washington
receive-
Post?
The Washington Post. Sorry, thanks. Even if you received the material itself was obtained illegally.
We don't know
you
that.
still have the right to publish it in theory, and we don't know that, and nobody's been accused of any crime.
I
So
don't
what's
see
happening
anybody
is like
filing any papers.
web-wide censorship.
Yeah, I think
Because
Amazon's
likes-
claim is a bunch of bunk. However, there's been some other OpenDNS kicked off their WikiLeaks.org URL because of the denial
I
of
think it was
service attack.
every DNS.
I'm sorry, every DNS.
Right.
Yeah, DNS.
But
We all get to make our little mistakes here and there and get.
I just wanted to make you feel better.
Get it.
You know, I think there's a real interesting question here, which is that with Amazon, maybe they were bowing to pressure from the government. Maybe they were just afraid of attracting a whole bunch of hackers that are trying to bring down WikiLeaks.
Now I think you're getting closer.
I would respect them a lot more actually if they just said that, but you have to admit like that people are dropping like flies because then the latest one is PayPal,
Right.
which says, you're not going to be able to use our service for illegal activity. Well, once again, no crime has been alleged or proven, not even alleged. No charges have been filed. It's basically just been a government level freakout.
The DNS provider is the only one in my mind that has the right thing here. They've said we gave them 24 hours notice that we were getting too much traffic. It's perfectly normal for web hosts and DNS providers to do this.
Too
If
much
something's
traffic,
getting
more
too-
traffic than
more-
Netflix gets?
More traffic than we can handle. I don't know if
More
it was
traffic
20%.
than the 20% of the entire internet? I don't think so.
I don't think it was, but it was
Unlikely.
probably more than they can handle because they're
There's a couple of
they're
guys. How
small
did you
provider.
download?
It's a free DNS provider, so there's
Okay, well.
so they're saying, look, we can't handle this. We're giving you 24-hour notice to move your DNS
Sketchy.
somewhere else. WikiLeaks didn't move it, and so the URL went down. But the fact of the matter is, you can mirror this thing all over the place. It's being mirrored everywhere. So it's not like, even if that was malicious, that you can really stop the signal at this point.
Right. Wasn't there actually a network, a dark network called Freenet or Freenode or something people were talking about 10 years ago that was specifically supposed to solve this problem, where it would be, you'd have all this information that was more or less hosted anonymously on everyone who was participating, and the government couldn't track it down.
Yeah, there was Freenet. I remember that.
Yeah.
I don't know
Freenet,
whatever
right.
happened to
So
them. There's also OpenNIC, which requires you to make a settings tweak in your network settings, but then you can have any domain name you want, any domain extension you want, like .geek or .leaks.
Yeah, that was a Mickey Mouse operation. I mean, first it went to a clearing. It had one main DNS. It would go to one place and then say, well, let's see what this is. And if that ever closed down, that was bad.
And if you get the IP address of WikiLeaks, you can go right there. You don't even have to have DNS resolved.
We should be publishing that.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. It's 86 something.
Well, that doesn't help.
It's a weird. This has become a really weird story, and one that I feel sort of uncomfortable with, because I don't want to have to be on the WikiLeaks side, because I think what they did is sort of unnecessary. It's kind of, it falls into that just because you can doesn't mean
Carl Burns,
but it's not damaging and it's not illegal, and they have now become the subject of a full-on witch hunt that I think is going to prove down the road, especially if laws get passed as a result.
Oh,
have some really bad unintended
these should be
consequences.
unconstitutional. First of all, Carl Bernstein, I think he was on one of the shows, talk shows, and I think he was one of the few guys in the media. The media was all crazy. Carl Bernstein said, "Hey, look, we're journalists. This is like a gold mine of material. Why would we want to reject it and condemn it when it's like there's stuff here for us?"
And apparently
there's no way that a newspaper wouldn't have published this if they got it.
And they did. That, from what I read, WikiLeaks started by working with Der Spiegel, The Guardian, New York Times.
That's it.
New York Times.
And said, look, help us figure out what names need to be redacted here. We want to be responsible about this. And they allowed those publications to publish things, and then they simultaneously published the leaks. So this was done in coordination with major journalistic outlets.
Yes, but what's funny is, of course, The Guardian, which is a communist newspaper by all intents and purposes out of England, they just piled on. I mean, they're just like, they're the ones that, if you want, anybody out there wants to read the good gossip, it's in The Guardian. I mean, they just barrel into it.
Well, isn't that
what I want to see is with the it's what they had to do with the Bank of America stuff, because it seems like they've taken all this heat and they may disappear because of a bunch of cables that really aren't that interesting and they don't have a smoking gun. But apparently they claim they have a whole lot of really interesting stuff from Bank of America, perhaps other corporations and banks that have done real damage and may actually help us understand what went wrong a little bit better, and that exactly these people knew what they were doing. And so I don't want to see Julian Assange disappear before we actually get this new problem.
Has he appeared?
And by the way, yeah, he did just the other day.
Disappeared.
It just doesn't make sense to me that everybody and their sister hasn't shorted the Bank of America. It just seems like an obvious thing to do. And if the WikiLeaks thing never appears, then you buy in at the low. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me that this isn't a stock market manipulation.
213.251.145.96 is the French IP address for WikiLeaks. But that is, the French government is trying to shut that one down.
Well, there's another one here.
There's another one that's a Swedish one.
86753019 or 9. 867539.
That's the primary one, and that redirects to 213.
Well, somebody says it redirects.
But 213 is in
France. The chat room is
France.
up to speed on this.
Thank you, chat room. So I've been wondering, why is it that we had all of these leaks about Afghanistan and Iraq? What was it, a month and a half ago, 2 months back in the summer?
I don't remember.
And there was a bit of an uproar, but we didn't have anyone taking them down. We didn't have PayPal withdrawing their support. We didn't have all of this controversy about it. Now we have a leak that is mostly about gossip, but it involves politicians instead of the military. And now WikiLeaks is on the run. I mean, it seems pretty clear to me.
That shows you who's more dangerous. And wait till the banks get a hold. I mean, you think that it's ratcheted up. First the military, which says okay, whatever, it doesn't mean anything to me. And then it went to the politicians who got all bent out of shape and made the media condemn the guy. Now the bankers. This guy's showing up dead left and right. Go watch the movie The International if you want to see what the international banking scene is like, even though it's a movie. But those guys are more dangerous than these other people.
But let's also remember why WikiLeaks is on the run right now, and it's because of the companies they've depended on to get their information out. There's no real alternative, it seems like, and you have both PayPal and Amazon that seem to have these acceptable use policies that were similar to what I understood as Soviet law, which was that everything was illegal so that they could arrest you when they wanted to. Well, and in this case, it seems like everything's against acceptable use, so they can kick you off when they want to.
That's where it's headed.
PayPal says their payment service cannot be used for any activities that encourage, promote, facilitate, or instruct others to engage in illegal activity.
Once again, this is not illegal.
What is it? Yeah, this is bogus.
Like, publishing this material is not illegal. You're absolutely right. It is the most arbitrary sort of Calvin ball that they're playing with their own terms of service and the law.
You could make an argument that encouraging people to leak things could be violating the law.
No, there's
publishing is different than leaking.
There's laws that protect whistleblowing, which is leaking stuff. So that's not true. The fact of the matter is we have a bunch of spineless corporate executives. Let's face reality. We're talking about a bunch of jellyfish out there that run these companies, and they pull the plug on stuff left and right as fast as they can so they don't get in trouble because they're afraid that their easy income is going to go down the tubes because they don't know, they don't get it. And so that's all it is, and this is the problem with the entire country.
And that's essentially what Julian Assange has said he is after. He is trying to fight powerful organizations, whether they're governments or corporations or anything else.
Yeah.
He sees himself as a publisher, as a journalist, and doing the job that journalism has sort of drifted away from doing.
Right. No, we'd rather talk about Britney Spears.
And free speech, I mean, as you know, once again, when this stuff was first published, I was like, really, you guys? But the fact is free speech is often uncomfortable, and frankly, at its best, it should be. And the fact that these companies, like you said, John, are running in terror at the slightest, at the tiniest little staffer phone call from Joe Lieberman's office is scary stuff. And Joe Lieberman is actually proposing legislation. God knows if it's going to pass, but if it does, it will have an utterly chilling.
Well, the legislation would say you cannot leak, you cannot publish the name of an intelligence operator.
Right.
So it would be a prior restraint. I'm not sure that passes a constitutional test.
Well, hope springs eternal, but they've gotten away with some pretty crazy stuff in today's paranoid climate.
The other thing,
there is one thing I think that we can say that a positive in terms of government wanting to discourage these sort of leaks, which is there's a real danger, I think, in terms of the future of a person that's giving advice to the government, whether it's from the private sector or two people in the public sector conferring, if they are afraid that those words will be later disclosed, because sometimes candid advice is not popular, and if there's a culture of fear that anything you say can show up the next week on the internet, then you will start having bad advice given or no advice given. And so from a policy perspective, there is a problem with just publishing all these stupid little documents as opposed to ones that are actually important, like the Pentagon Papers, which are brought up frequently in this context.
Well, that's true, John. You made the crack about Britney Spears, but a lot of these stories that are being put out are not any level above that.
It's just
close
to
put a diplomat's name instead of Britney Spears, and it's the same story in some cases. Graduate students are being warned away from admitting they've read the leaked memos, the leaked cables.
What?
The White House is forbidding a lot of federal departments from reading them. They're blocking them.
Yeah, that's just terrible. I have a master's in public policy. A lot of my friends went through difficult situations applying for jobs at state and federal governments, and to be honest, it horrifies me that they would put this sort of additional burden on people that they should never use their computer to go to a site that has something like this. Especially because I actually think these documents, though I just argued that they probably shouldn't be released when they're so meaningless, can actually be helpful for students that are trying to understand how these decisions are made and how the government actually works. It's incredibly difficult to understand how our government works, believe it or not, right? And so the idea of being able to see this as a student when you have time to just mull through it and see how these decisions are made, and it actually can be interesting. And so if anyone should be reading it, it seems to me like maybe students should.
No, it's unbelievable. It's starting to feel like we're wandering into book burning territory. The idea that you shouldn't read this material that is now publicly available all over the web because you might not get a job someday, this is appalling.
It is. You're totally right.
And to bring it back to technology, I'm not even sure that you can stop this from happening. If you got rid of Julian Assange, if you got rid of WikiLeaks, There's still Crypto.me out there. There's still other sites. Drudge Report leaks stuff all the time. There's plenty of sites.
The Monica Lewinsky thing was leaked from the Drudge.
There's plenty of other avenues.
His reputation.
And even if you shut down WikiLeaks.org, a bunch of mirrors show up. You have torrents of the entire package of cables out there. I mean, this is something that the entertainment industry has learned very well, which is on the internet where things are infinitely copyable. Once it's out, it's out. And actually trying to step and stop on it makes it more widespread.
And if you continue to sort of persecute WikiLeaks and continue to create this sort of witch hunt, you will then be creating a whole other army of Assange-esque kind of missionary types who want to take up the cause on his behalf, because they'll say, look at this reaction. This reaction shows that the U.S. government and any government, just as we've been saying all along, right, wants to conduct all its business in secret. They don't want their dirty laundry out. They don't want you to know anything. And then look at how they violated their own principles of free speech when they were faced with their own actions.
Actually, it may be worse than the way you're describing it if you think about what you said, which is that, remember when the virus thing started up and there were very few of them, and then all of a sudden it became a trendy thing, so everybody started writing and designing viruses, and then every hacker in the world came out of the woodwork. I mean, if this thing went crazy and you had a bunch of kids that were just hacking in the government computers and doing all kinds of nutty stuff, which would be totally illegal, and then spreading it all over the place like crazy, you'd really have an interesting situation on your hands.
Well, look, if you've got the modern day Pentagon Papers, you probably went to WikiLeaks to get rid of them because you trusted them and you knew that your identity would be kept secret and whatnot. But my understanding is it's been several weeks since WikiLeaks has stopped accepting new data because, in the words of the founder, their collecting of data was increasing exponentially, and their ability to verify and do anything with it was increasing linearly.
We need a new WikiLeaks out there.
Well, there are some people who did not like the way Julian Assange ran WikiLeaks have left, and they're trying to start their own WikiLeaks type organization that focuses more on local issues rather than these big exploding national issues.
Good, because with no journalists at the local level, that's incredibly needed. But what is needed is the trust, and that's where the internet has a million places you can publish, but you need to find a place you can trust if you're the future of your job, all of your employment is at stake if you're going to leak something or blow a whistle.
All right, let's move on. We're going to talk about some Google news. They've got an event announced, but I want to thank our sponsor, Ford, makers of the 2011 Ford Edge. I got to drive around in a Ford Edge. My brother and sister, or my brother-in-law and my sister, were in town for Thanksgiving, and they rented one. Smooth lines, fluid aerodynamic shape. Instrument panel is very, very nice. Door trim, floor console. Best-in-class second-row legroom. I can attest to that. I've got long legs. I could sit back there. My nephew's got even longer legs these days. He could sit back there. And ambient lighting that you can choose. You can choose the lighting that fits your mood. That was interesting when we were in the car, and I didn't realize this, but then Ben, my nephew, says, turn it to Comet Blue, which Comets is the name of the high school team in Greenville where he lives. And so there were actually a couple of blues you can choose from. So you can change that instrument panel. They have unbeatable V6 highway fuel efficiency, best-in-class 27 highway miles per gallon. Edge is also available in a high-performance Edge Sport, which offers even more horsepower and 280 foot-pounds of torque. The 2011 Ford Edge also features Ford's My Touch, connects you to your vehicle in new and intuitive ways. You've heard us talk about Ford voice-activated sync. That's the voice control part of Touch. There's also 3 touchscreen LCDs providing information. There are 3 LCD screens providing information, and there's 1 8-inch touchscreen in the center stack, 2 5-way switch pads on the steering wheel. If you're in the market for a car and you haven't driven one, go try a test drive. Drive a Ford 2011 Ford Edge. And if you'd like a free test drive in Madrid, Spain, you can go to twitfordfocus.com and upload a video explaining why you would want to win and why you think $10,000 should be donated to a charity of your choice. Just make that video, keep it concise, and upload it at twitfordfocus.com. You could win a trip to Madrid for a test drive of the Ford Edge, as well as the National Institute for Aerospace Technology. They make rockets there, you know. So check it out, twitfordfocus.com, and go check out a 2011 Ford Edge. All right, Google is going to launch something on December 7th. This is an auspicious day for many reasons. It's Pearl Harbor Day, but it's also the launch of World of Warcraft Cataclysm. There's another conference going on, D-Mobile something is going on, and Chrome is now going to have an announcement December 7th at 10:30 a.m. in San Francisco. Two main bets. It's going to be either a Chrome OS update, probably not a netbook. They said they wouldn't have one of those till after the first of the year, but either a new version of Chrome OS or the Chrome Store, where you can buy web apps.
The Chrome.
Which do you think it's going to be?
I think it'd be the Chrome Store.
It seems more likely since they're not going to have the netbook. You agree, Molly?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Chrome Store. I'm still holding out hope, actually, that they're just going to come to their senses and scrap all that Chrome OS business anyway.
I hope so.
Oh, they're not.
I'm with you.
You can hope all you want, but it's coming.
You're all so smart. Why are you doing this?
But that's what the Chrome Store is about. The Chrome Store is when we have Chrome OS, this is how you'll have your application. Since Chrome OS, I mean, if people don't know, is just a Chrome browser.
You have a machine with Linux?
Yes.
And there's basically a Linux store hooked to Ubuntu. You click on the thing, boom, you get all your
repository, right?
Yeah, but there's a million things online you can load anytime you want. There's thousands of apps.
Mac's going to have their store.
You could still just have Android and have the Android store, which they already have.
But
those aren't web apps.
Operating system.
That's what gets me.
They can't be.
Why do you want to buy a web app?
If iTunes can become your source for shoe buying, recipes, music, movies, podcasts, books, anything you could ever think of, why can't the Android market expand to include web apps when it inevitably becomes a netbook and tablet operating system?
I think I should sell recipes. 10 cents a recipe.
I think it's part of it's the never-ending cycle of having a browser that is really fast, and then you say it'd be really cool if we could do a couple more things, and then you bloat it all down, and then someone else comes out with a new browser, Chrome, and it goes really fast because there's not a lot in it, and you start saying, how can we add more things to this? And
you're
bloat it
right.
up?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That's exactly what happens with all these things. With the operating systems, it happens.
Well, this is not a new idea either. Netscape had this idea. The Netscape Constellation back in 1986. Do you remember that, John?
Yep.
And it was going to replace your operating system. You wouldn't need it anymore. And that's essentially what Chrome OS is.
Which I think was actually Gates's idea. I don't think Netscape people thought about this to begin with, but then Gates says, they're going to take over the world because Andreessen made some casual comment. And they said, well, it isn't a bad idea. Let's do it.
And do you think it's a bad idea?
Yeah, I think it's a bad idea.
I think it would have happened by now.
Dvorak, if it's a bad idea.
Yeah, it's a bad idea. I mean, yeah, it would have happened by now. Everything is a bad idea.
That's true.
But okay, so let's take Chrome OS out of the equation just for a second. Chrome browser launches with a web app store. Let's say that's what we get. It seems to be the most likely scenario. Mm-hmm. Is that any better of an idea? A web app store?
No, I'm not into this stuff. As far as I think Apple kind of did it the right way. I think web apps. I mean, come on, you just go on the web. What do you need a store? You just put up a website. If you have you say you design something, you have to go through the Google Web App Store to distribute it when you can just have a crappy web page that you could put on with WordPress.com.
Flip it around.
Makes no sense.
Can you think of even one reason why you would want to have a web app store?
No.
So
okay,
Facebook
wait.
Yeah?
You have one. Go. Tell us what.
No,
it is.
I don't.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, I was hoping you did.
No,
because I can't think
don't.
of one either. Molly, can you think of one? Chris?
Well, yes. I mean, I think right now apps in general are a stopgap until the actual web experience catches up to or gets a lot better in terms of the interfaces that we're all starting to use. Right now, there isn't a good touch interface kind of system for using the web, right? The web isn't touch friendly. The web isn't Google TV friendly because you don't have, voice controls, or it's annoying to use a keyboard with your television. And so I think apps are kind of the halfway house between the HTML5 and the web experience catching up to these new kind of class of always on, always connected devices. And so, okay, give me a web app store right now because I want something that is more focused than the web at large, faster, and streamlined for my device. I just don't want that to become the dominant paradigm forever.
Well, I don't think so, but I want to give an homage to the chat room they're doing this from Marco. They're doing this because they've realized that Apple's found a market in crippling your users with less functionality. Anyway,
Well,
I
there is
personally found that
something to be
amusing,
said for
okay?
simplicity, right? If it's just a portal that says, "Hey, here are a bunch of good websites, essentially that happen to be apps," that doesn't. The way I remember them unveiling this when they talked about it before was it was a store and you had to download something, and a lot of them you had to pay for, and I just don't see why you do that.
I totally think it's stupid. I'm just trying to come up with the reason.
Yeah.
Molly?
No, you did a good job.
Hey, Molly?
Yes?
Am I being snippy with you? I have this one guy that keeps harassing me in the chat room that says I'm being mean to you.
If you are, I haven't really noticed.
Yeah,
This
see,
is just how
I
we are.
knew it.
This is,
I think Molly
this is
can
how
take
we
care of
roll,
herself on
as
these
I like to
issues.
say.
Yeah, well, these guys.
That's because you're street.
I'm a snippy man, says Spinner Bones.
It's snippy
There's a
with
Skype
everyone.
app
Does
coming
it seem
out,
worse
right?
because
And
I'm
so-
more vulnerable as a girl?
10 cents snippy.
I think John's been snippier with me than Molly.
And well, for good reason.
Exactly.
I've watched
Wait,
John
what?
for a long time, and he actually seems to be in rather good spirits tonight. I haven't detected snippiness toward anyone.
There you go.
No.
Well, he picked
We're
up his
all
bottle
We're
of
all
booze.
doing
so.
great. Thank you, chat room. I appreciate it.
Appreciate
Thanks
the
for looking out
concern.
for me.
They're trying to get
but
a
it's
date.
Cool. I'm totally used to his bad dad thing.
Google also ended its week-long suit. Well, we don't know. It was probably going on for longer than a week, but the rumors have been going for a week that they were going to buy Groupon. Apparently, Groupon walked away from it. Now,
I'm now thinking this was a publicity stunt.
for Groupon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or for both of them. I don't know. This whole
Well, not that Google
the deal
needs it.
didn't sound right, did it?
It sounded weird that Google would buy a company that doesn't do
For that
anything
kind of money?
algorithmically.
And for that kind of money and a make-buy decision that Google couldn't do it?
Was
Come
it
on.
$6 billion they walked away from? This reminds me
Makes
of a
no
conversation Molly Wood and I had on Buzz Out Loud years ago when Facebook walked away from, what was it? That was like only a few million, I think, right?
Yeah, that was just
this $6 billion.
30 or 40 million, I think. I don't understand anybody walking away from $6 billion. If that deal
For
fell apart,
that-
I think it has everything to do with the Justice Department and nothing to do with money.
I think it had nothing to do with anything. I think this was a phony deal from the get-go.
Groupon, by the way, if you don't know, it's pretty popular, so I imagine most everybody knows, but it's a way to get discounts, right? It's a coupon site. They have one deal per day per city.
I don't think it was bogus, though, because everybody else is doing this. Amazon put that money into whatever that one, the
That was
Live
$6
Local
billion.
thing, the same thing. But no, everyone is getting into a way to try to localize search results and localize reviews. So there's no question that Google should want something like this. Maybe they didn't want to pay that much in the end. I cannot see Groupon being like $6 billion. I don't think so.
I agree.
What?
I heard some good reasons why Google would want to have a company with a huge local sales staff that could help out with AdSense.
They had something like
sort of things.
3,500 salespeople locally.
And Google doesn't have very many salespeople. They kind of rely on AdSense to just work on its own.
Amazon invested $175 million in Living Social. eBay bought some other company that does Milo.com, which also does niche, like localized searching. So everybody in Google space is starting to play in the local playground.
Maybe this was a move for Groupon to get all of their competitors bought, so they could be the only remaining independent.
That's convoluted.
Well,
I like
if you're going to go along that line of thinking, there's also the possibility, because we've seen Google do this before, try to bid something up to make some sucker, a.k.a. Microsoft, come in and overspend on something that Google really didn't want in the first place. And I think this may have been like, one of those deals where you have the dollar bill hooked to a little fish line, and you throw it out there, see if Microsoft tries to pick it up, and you pull it away.
Does $6 billion for Groupon? I think everybody agreed that was just an outrageous amount of money for this company, at least right now. Is this a sign that there is a bubble in venture capital in investing?
No, I think it's pent up demand because there's nobody can do an IPO because of Sarbanes-Oxley.
I was waiting for it.
Hey, I bring it up when I can. He's the one who set me up with a slow pitch. So nobody can do an IPO, and so you got all these people. They got money they want to invest. They want to throw it at companies, and they can't. So they have to buy these companies because these companies can't go public and get some money to grow. It's ruining the economy. It's ruining the country. It's ruining the business. We're screwed because of this.
I think there's a venture bubble, though, too. I mean, I think there's a way everybody's over relying now on purchasing smaller companies to build up your portfolio, and as a result, venture capital guys are just throwing money at these tiny companies that are wanting to get bought. And I just yesterday Friday, had lunch with somebody who's going to work at a startup and said it's warm body time again in San Francisco, where they're just pulling people off the street, giving them a hot meal, cleaning them up, and putting them to work.
Spraying them down. Get in the room here. We got to hose them down.
That's why all those startups have showers. It's not for the bikers.
It's hosing them down.
because they're hiring bums.
Give them a cot.
I think the reason there is a bubble is because you have people saying there is definitely not a bubble. Whenever they're, that is the true sign, is when people say, hey, is there a bubble? And people go definitively, no, this will last forever. This is not a problem.
That is a bubble, you're right.
And that's that we're starting to get people saying
it's like when people say invest in the stock market, nobody thinks it's going to crash, and it crashes. Or, oh, it's terrible, don't buy any stock, and then it goes up. I mean, yeah, that's not unusual.
So I don't know that there is a dangerous falling out from an investment bubble the way there was from a stock market bubble, because it's a limited group of people. But does that mean we would just not see any new, if it did bust, we just wouldn't see any new companies for a while?
Well, I think that's for sure. We're not seeing a lot. I mean, a lot of companies can't really grow because of the problem of getting public money. But I think Molly may be onto something, because I've noticed the traffic has been a little more congested than usual at this time of year. And that's always, I kind of judge the activity in the Bay Area in terms of high tech or whatever just by the freeways, and it's a little bit annoying. It's jammed up a lot more than it used to be.
On Friday, I was driving. There was hardly anybody going across the bridge, though. That's a good. I guess startup people don't work on Fridays.
Well, it's December,
it's a 4 day,
so December is hit or miss in terms of traffic.
That's true, too.
I've noticed more traffic.
Yeah.
I have been definitely attributing the increase in just Bay Bridge traffic to like a slow and steady improvement in the economy. Friday
was not you mentioned I was on the road on Friday, and you're right. Friday was exceedingly dull. There wasn't anything going on. But the rest of the week, Wednesday, was pretty rough.
We're devolving into traffic reports, which is almost as good as talking about the weather. So I'm going to
it's as good.
Take a moment to talk about Squarespace.
We've got great weather up here, too, if we can come back to that.
Okay. In Minnesota?
Yeah.
Sunny? Warm and sunny?
We'll have Chris with the weather next.
I'll quiet down now.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to publish a high-quality website or blog. I use it for Forecast. ForecastPodcast.com is on Squarespace. We use it on Sword and Laser. It's got an easy-to-use UI, optimized for beginners and CSS experts. It doesn't matter whether you're a starting person who just doesn't really know anything but wants to create a website, or if you're one of those people who likes to tweak the code. You can get in there and do that too. Hundreds of design templates, all-inclusive services, including blog modules, import and export. So if you want to try it out for free, you can actually do that. Take your WordPress, your TypePad, your movable type, Blogger blog, whatever you got, import it into Squarespace, try it out for free, and see how you like it. You can just import everything over and play around with it. They've got Flickr widgets, Twitter widgets, website tracking, and you don't have to worry about bandwidth. If you're hosting your site yourself, like if you've got WordPress up on a web host, you might get overwhelmed. Squarespace can provision that stuff as they go. Sign up for a free account. You don't need a credit card to do it. Just go and use the offer code TWiT and get 10% off the lifetime of your new account at squarespace.com. Is it squarespace.com/twit? Or I think you just go to squarespace.com, use the offer code TWiT. And we thank them for their support of This Week in Tech. A Russian man who is thought to be responsible, or at least accused of being responsible for, what is it, a third of the world's spam, has said, no, I'm not. It's all a ruse. I'm pleading not guilty to this. Do you believe him, Molly?
Well, I mean, it seemed like sort of a weird number anyway, right? It seemed a little specious to say, like, yep, this is the guy, 30% of spam.
His botnet does it all.
It feels a little hard to count exactly what a botnet is sending out. So maybe he's just, quibbling a little bit with the numbers. It seems pretty clear that
I'm not guilty of a third. I may be guilty of a sixth.
Exactly.
But I'm not guilty of a third. That's ridiculous.
I wish I was guilty of third.
He's in Madison, Wisconsin. He's in jail, waiting trial. His lawyer has said he's king of nothing but that cell they're keeping him in. He is not a spam king.
King of the cell. At least he's king of something.
Oleg Nikolenko.
The thing that kills me is it strikes me that with all this spam that we're still getting, that this perhaps prosecuting people one-on-one isn't the best solution for it.
Well, sometimes though they've been able to
huge monster in the spam community.
They've been able to reduce spam significantly when they take down certain botnets. But I don't know. You may be right, Chris. Taking out an individual may not take out the botnet. So
don't get me wrong, the individuals should be taken out, but if we want to solve spam, it's not going to be resolved in the courts. I mean, I think it really has to be a technical solution. And you know, this argument about 33% of the spam, I mean, I don't really care if it's 1,200 messages in my Gmail spam folder or 800 or whatever. I mean, there's and maybe we have solved it. I mean, Dvorak has a solution, Gmail has a solution, but to a certain extent, it seems like not an interesting trial just because it's just, if it wasn't that guy, it'd be another guy, right?
Pretty much.
Well, that's the thing, right? He's got a botnet. He's got a system. He goes to jail. That doesn't take away the spam.
Nothing. I mean, Microsoft has actually had a little bit of success in shutting down the botnets themselves. I mean, I think there was one point where they had reduced global spam messages by 2 or 3 billion messages a day. By taking out an actual botnet. And it's true, like you can put this guy in jail, but I'm sure that, I mean, for one thing, the botnet runs itself.
Yeah, and gee, a funny thing is most botnets run off of Microsoft Windows.
Right,
Well,
although
most computers run off of Microsoft Windows.
Well, still.
I know, seriously. What?
Good point.
Comcast is taking action, though, and I hope we see other ISPs stepping up to say, you know, we have a role here, and we can take action. We can work with our subscribers proactively to tell them that their computer's infected because of the pattern of traffic. And that, to me, seems like a good solution. It's just one that's labor intensive, and so the major ISPs don't want to embrace it, would be my guess.
Google is going to take the side of copyright owners. They put up a blog post this week laying out 4 principles to their plan. They're going to act on reliable copyright takedown requests within 24 hours, prevent terms that are closely associated with piracy from appearing in autocomplete, improve their AdSense anti-piracy review so that AdSense ads aren't showing up on sites that link to infringing materials, and experiment to make authorized preview content more readily accessible in search results. Now, combine this with their earlier cooperation with Verizon to propose net neutrality rules. Google seems to be crossing over to the corporate advocacy side rather than the individual advocacy.
It could be just lip service for all we know.
Well, I think Google is, I think 2 things. One, Google is trying very hard to make nice with rights holders right now because of the growing debacle that is Google TV. And they know that if they can't get some deals with some actual major content providers and networks, that Google TV is a little bit dead on arrival. So I think they're trying to kind of suck up to them now and say, like, listen, we'll protect your rights online so that people aren't stealing and also hopefully provide you with a new business model. But I also have to think that this is a little bit of chilling effect fallout maybe from the U.S. government seizing 82 domain names with roughly no due process because they used an argument that could, you know, these domain names were pointing to copyrighted material that could potentially extend to Google.
Let's grab Google. Now, that would be something if the government shut down Google.
Well, you're right. By the logic they use, I mean, they did go to a federal magistrate, but no one was allowed to defend themselves. They said, look, there's infringing material. It's pointing to it. We get to seize it. Every search engine, Bing, Google, Ask,
eBay,
Northern Lights, Alta Vista,
anybody. Craigslist.
Anybody could be linking to infringing material. I mean, and of course, there's that law working its way through Congress, was approved by committee, that would make it explicitly the authority of the government to seize a domain name. Yeah. Now, seizing a domain name, as we talked about in WikiLeaks, doesn't actually take the site offline. It just makes it a little harder for your average person to find.
Makes it a lot harder.
I think it's scary, though. I think a lot of this we're looking at right now is the demise of the original, I think it was John Perry Barlow's suggestion that the internet was beyond the jurisdiction of governments. And in this week, we've certainly seen that governments, when they want to, can assert some jurisdiction and at the very least make it a tremendous hassle to get your message out, regardless of whether it's pirated materials or allegedly pirated materials or secret cables or whatnot. And I think you know, the Chinese government, for instance, is probably looking very interestedly on all of this, and others as well. So I think this has been a very sobering week for the way government interacts with the federal government interacts with the internet.
The golden age of the internet is over.
Well, and just last week you had Tim Berners-Lee writing basically a manifesto saying, hey, somebody needs to stand up and protect the internet because it is under attack from all sides, up to and including the government and Facebook. And it's time to say, look, this is a thing that has changed the world. This is an invention whose fundamental openness and innovative nature has created, possibly the best age in human history, and it's being impinged upon by all comers, pretty much.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Chris.
Although I would say also that we say government, and that's a complicated term. And there's a fascinating article that I just read. It's called, oh, wow, I just lost it. The Internet That Might Have Been. If you Google it, I'll bet you'll pop up. It was a law professor out of New Orleans. And it goes through and it illustrates the way that government has allowed the Internet to become the strong force that it is by having good policies. And so I think there's two countervailing forces at work there. And right now we're just seeing a whole lot of the force we don't want to see, the force that the EFF steps up to fight.
You know what the irony of the whole thing is kind of interesting, is that remember when the internet first started cropping up and started getting some traction in the mid-'90s? And then anytime someone would try to commercialize anything, they would be jumped, oh, you can't do this, you're a horrible person for putting an advertisement on the internet. And it went on and on like that. Now it's gotten to the point where there's nothing but advertisements on the internet. It's completely switched around. You put any real facts or information or use it for anything other than advertisements, which is where it's all headed, then that's bad, and the government goes after you. I find it slightly ironic.
Well, yeah, I remember I resisted getting a graphical browser for just that reason for a few years. I wanted to stay on links. I didn't think that was a good idea to put graphics on the web.
You were one of those guys.
I changed my mind, yeah.
Ew, ads are terrible.
Yeah, exactly. Do we think Google is changing sides here? I mean, are they going from being on the side of the little guy and the free internet people to being on the side of?
Come on, Google's on Google's side.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Thank you, Molly.
As they get bigger, they find themselves in bed with bigger partners.
But Microsoft pulled this. If you remember, Microsoft had to knuckle under to all these people that were worried about their content being ripped off, and so you have Microsoft, the media product that they have. It doesn't do this. It doesn't do that. It's got all kinds of digital rights management stuff built in. You can't do this. You can't do that because Microsoft's kowtowed to Hollywood and Google, to get any traction. And I think Molly's right. The Google TV thing is moribund. It's just stuck in the mud, and they need to do something. And so they're doing the same thing. They're selling out. Instead of leaving these things open for people to use them any way they want to, they're going to sell out the user so somebody else can make even more money and have a second limo.
The only one of these four principles that I have a big problem with is the autocomplete one. Saying we're going to respond to DMCA takedown notices, well, that's a problem with the DMCA, not Google. AdSense, anti-piracy review, that's their own deal. That's ads. Making authorized preview content more accessible seems to be a positive thing. But how do you decide what terms are piracy related?
You tell me. I don't know.
No, really. I mean, are you suddenly not going to get a instant search result for Avatar?
Yeah,
or maybe you're doing student research into piracy, right? And you look into you're Googling for Avatar piracy.
Avatar.
You got nothing.
MPEG-4.
I mean, you'll still
just
get
looking.
results. But the other thing is, it's just such a bizarro cosmetic change anyway. It's like, oh yeah, we have this awesome feature, autocomplete. You'll still get search results if you search for Avatar torrent, but you just won't see it drop down at the same time. Like you'll have to think of it all by yourself. It's not only disturbing, it's actually just kind of dumb.
This actually seems antithetical to the point that Google has been trying to make, which is that their search engine returns what it does because it's a good algorithm. And it actually seems more like they're sort of getting into the tampering that they want to avoid because they really don't want to be accused of selecting certain e-commerce sites or companies over others when there's searches. And so I kind of wonder if they're going to see some blowback in that regard.
It's a bad road for them to go down, for sure.
So far.
Yeah, I think autocomplete is sort of a silly thing.
I turned mine off
to throw out.
I got sick of it.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't even pay attention to it a lot of the time.
Well, it jumps around, drives you crazy. I think you can have an epileptic fit.
I look at it as easy spell check.
Instant. This is different.
Oh, I'm talking about the instant one.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just like it will not complete the words for you. You have to type them yourself. I mean, if I was a rights holder and this was Google's attempt to suck up to me, I'd be saying, because I do think they are, there's no question, But if I'm a rights holder, I'm like, why weren't you responding to DMCA takedown notices faster before? How is taking it out of autocomplete going to deter anybody from anything if you're not actually changing search results? Why wouldn't you be, as a decent search engine, offering links to previews that are legal? Like, it's sort of, if you break it down, it's kind of like Google giving the impression of selling themselves out more than they even are, and it doesn't seem like it's going to make anyone happy.
You know, a company that's got a better approach to fighting piracy is Netflix, because what they do is say, you know what, we want to make as many things available for legal streaming as possible. New York Post earlier this week reported that Netflix is making a run for in-season episodes of big TV hits. It was rumored they were willing to pay $100,000 per episode to get the rights. Paid Content's Andrew Wallenstein said that's a bunch of hooey. This is not what Netflix is going to be able to do. No TV network in their right mind would license Glee to Netflix, because
who wants to watch Glee anyway?
Well, or any pick your.
Funny you'd bring up Glee of all examples.
CSI.
I
perhaps?
suspect you watch Glee.
I watch it every so often. My wife's a huge fan of it.
Okay, whatever.
You know, Gwyneth Paltrow can sing. You should watch that episode.
I'm not watching Glee.
Molly, do you watch Glee?
I don't watch Glee, but John is now annoying me enough that I kind of want to.
Yeah. My job is done.
Anyway, what Paid Content's Andrew Wallenstein pointed out is what they should do is try to get the serial dramas that don't go into syndication. His argument is, why would anyone sell the rights to current episodes to Netflix when they can make so much more money in syndication? And most of 3 of the networks have a Hulu interest they can use for that. They wouldn't give them to Netflix. But the older serialized shows that are harder to jump into in the beginning might be a good opportunity. And he used AMC's Mad Men or CSI as examples of ways that you could possibly have Netflix help you out with your ratings.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, there has to be a kind of a dichotomized approach to these things. I think you're right. Mad Men is a perfect example of something people like to watch. They get into it. You get into it late in the game. A lot of these things like Mad Men and Rubicon was the same way. If you didn't see the first few episodes, or you can't keep up, you have to go back. You have to find some way of watching it from the beginning. And that's...
As much as I agree with that point of view to a certain extent, the networks still have been totally resistant to do that. I mean, Hulu's a perfect example. Like, there are so many shows that I would want to watch if I could get caught up, and if I could just stream them at work and get, but I can only see the last 5 episodes of Fringe or something on Hulu, and it's just that I feel like Netflix is probably pursuing everything with the same fervor because the networks are objecting to any flexibility with the same fervor.
Well, they don't want to give up the money. I'm sorry, Chris. I just say this real quickly. They don't want to give up the money that they already know they can get through existing licensing sort of situations to risk the money that they might get if online television really takes off.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we look a step ahead, Netflix licenses a couple of these series that people really want to see. We're looking at 20%, if you believe the number right now, of the streaming traffic. More people are finding out about it. More people are signing up for that $9 a month or whatever it is offer to do the streaming
$8
only.
for streaming only, and $9 with one disc. Yeah.
Okay, so $8. I think it'll be really interesting to see. I don't think our cable and DSL networks can handle that many people streaming these shows. And so I kind of wonder if Netflix could be a victim of its own success by just getting too much good content. Because right now they're doing tremendous with movies that are a lot of times 4 weeks after their release date, television shows that are a season or 2 out. And so I think it'll be interesting to see what happens if they're able to do this. I don't know if they have a plan moving forward of how they're going to really deliver it to people at a high quality.
I think our networks, the ISPs and the backbones could probably handle it if they hadn't so successfully killed off and or demonized BitTorrent technology. Just saying.
Right. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point.
No, Views uses BitTorrent to stream video.
Who?
Views.
I don't know Views.
They used to be called something else before that. But again, because of what Molly just said, because of the demonization of the word, everybody's hesitant to get in bed with them.
Well, I don't think actually BitTorrent would have. It's a great point. I mean, BitTorrent would have solved some of these issues with the streaming, although CDNs to a certain extent, the content delivery networks took that over. But fundamentally, there's just not the capacity for everyone to. Right now, we're seeing traffic broadband increase by 30% on the year. I think if it goes up to 50 or 60, I don't think anyone's really prepared for that.
20% is Netflix. Don't forget.
Well, yeah, but
Maybe.
the increase is, I believe, on the order of 30 or 40%. And I guess the question I have is just, I don't think as an infrastructure we're ready to handle this. There's certain cities that are FiOS can handle it. A number of the community networks can handle it. But Netflix is sort of full speed ahead without regard to the fact that I don't think a lot of people will be able to use this when everyone's getting on it. So.
No, absolutely. It's a disaster waiting to happen. The FiOS can handle the downloads, but can Netflix deliver enough? That's the problem, and that's the beauty of torrents is that everybody took part in this kind of passing around aspect of it. So you had it wasn't like dependent on one single source, but then there's all kinds of legal issues with it.
Well, and if everybody was using torrents, then Comcast would be sending as much traffic back to level 3 as level 3 was sending to it.
Right. That's true.
Well, BitTorrents make it really great if I have a piece of content that I want to get out to millions of people, but there's still the fact that I need to get a certain number of bits down to my computer at a certain rate in order to have a good quality experience watching it. There's also just the fundamental stupidity of streaming when you have an internet like we have, where a progressive download or something like that would be far superior, but the content creators want to use streaming because they think it'll prohibit the piracy.
Bring back Juiced.
Juiced
was using BitTorrent for its streaming.
It was?
Yeah. Worked well.
Funny.
Even with as few users as it had, it worked well. Can you imagine if
it was you and 5 other guys?
Well, Molly was next door to me at the time.
That's true. Yeah.
We were watching. That was it. We were sharing the bits back and forth.
It worked perfectly, though.
If Juiced is in an app store from Chrome, maybe people would know about it.
It all comes back
as around and about. Show's over.
Another program.
Callbacks are the soul of comedy.
Right. One more program that uses P2P is Skype, and they're ramping up, according to TechCrunch, a new series of web-based products. This rumor goes in line with the rumor that Facebook would be integrating Skype. What they say, Jason Kincaid says on TechCrunch, is that Skype is hoping to launch a web-based service in the first quarter that would integrate into multiple partner sites. The ability, maybe in LinkedIn or Facebook, to use Skype to call people, and you would have a special plan in Skype that would allow you to do that.
Huh.
It may be free to start with, and then they try to sell you premium features.
Like what?
Like text messaging.
Skype is free now. You get all that stuff
international
for free.
calls, all that stuff.
Well,
it would be the same thing, right? In your embedded version.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, I don't think people should be using Facebook. So,
well, what about LinkedIn or what about anything else? Any other site? Channel Dvorak. Would you put Skype in there? So
no. Why not? You just go. You want a Skype account? Just go to Skype. Skype.com. Skype.org.
What there's
what is the idea here? It doesn't make sense to me.
You don't have to download software. I like a web-based approach.
It's web apps.
For Skype. It's web apps. It's not even it doesn't have to be a web app. It's just web-based, like as opposed to downloading a piece of software. That's awesome.
Oh.
This is essentially what we thought eBay was going to do with Skype when they owned them.
Yeah, well, they didn't because it's a bad idea.
If it works better than the system where
what's wrong with Skype the way it is? I just don't get why everything has to all of a sudden be web-based.
The problem is that you need to have a webcam that works, and I go through this with family members.
Build cars?
I agree with that. We should be driving horses. The trouble with horses, they crapped all over the place. Can you imagine what it smelled like in New York around 1890? I mean, just imagine.
There's not an analogous problem with a web app of Skype, though.
Well, there is. The stink aspect. The idea stinks, just like horses is backwards.
I'm sorry, Molly, what were you saying?
I just said maybe like DLLs or the metaphor. Like Skype craps all over my registry. I want a web app.
That's exactly. The web app is cleaner. And I think the idea is I don't have to launch a separate application if I'm in. I know you don't want to use Facebook, but a lot of people are using it as their contact manager now. And if I want to call somebody, I can call them right out of Facebook if I'm already in it. Or LinkedIn.
It's like Meebo.
Do you use LinkedIn, John?
Yeah.
What if you could just call somebody right out of LinkedIn? I
don't want to call anybody on LinkedIn.
Well, you just don't want to talk to people. But
absolutely. I mean, what am I calling people for?
I think this is the getting nowhere portion of the show.
Yeah, let's go to the next topic.
Let's move on. Prosecutors dismissed the Xbox modding case It was quite a week for the Xbox modding case. Robert Crippen was being brought to trial for selling mod chips for the Xbox. First, he was told he could not use fair use as a defense. Then, when the trial started and the jury was seated, the judge went on a tirade against the prosecution and then suggested maybe he could use fair use as a defense.
Oh.
They took a recess, came back. Looked like the prosecution was willing to carry on under the new rules that Judge Philip Gutierrez had put in place, and then the next day they dropped the case.
So this was a waste of the taxpayers' money is what you're saying.
Big waste of the taxpayers' money because they got nowhere. There's not even a precedent here. But Crippen gets off, and he doesn't have to pay any money or to do any jail time or suffer any penalty for selling the mod chips for an Xbox.
Well, I hope he keeps doing it then.
And better yet, nobody sets a really disturbing hardware-related precedent that says that you can't mod or pay somebody to mod your own hardware that you bought.
And that's a good thing.
Which is good.
But it doesn't set a precedent that you can either, and I think that's why the prosecution dropped the case, is they were worried about that. They were worried that this would end up setting a precedent saying, you know what, anytime you're doing it for a reasonable purpose, like making a backup of your own game, you should be allowed to do. That would break the DMCA wide open.
Mm-hmm. If you put it that way, it's sad that it didn't go forward. But given the 50-50 chance it would have gone, actually probably better than that in today's climate, it would have gone the wrong way.
I bet Mr. Crippen's really glad it didn't go on.
He's fired up.
Yeah. He's pretty excited.
I'm happy that it went away. Like, I'm willing to have, committed the amount of time and money that was committed to it.
He said he's going back to school. He's going to finish his degree. He's done. He's not going to sell mod chips anymore.
Go get a degree in law.
Maybe he's going to get a law degree.
How many other people with good ideas are going to just not move forward with it because they're afraid of just the law battle? Because that's a pretty major deterrent right there. And that's a victory for those who don't want the modding.
For the forces of evil. Let's be real about this.
Who's on the forces of evil?
The people that are trying to just slam down any poor kid who's got a good idea. That and Sarbanes-Oxley. Just thought I'd get that in.
Drink.
So have another what's our next topic?
I'm going to give you a chance to get a drink and do our final sponsor, Gotomeeting. Improve your conference calls and keep everyone on the same page when you share your screen with Gotomeeting. For a free 30-day trial, you can visit gotomeeting.com/twit. If you want to do a meeting with people and you've got folks all over the country and you don't want to travel, Gotomeeting is a great way to do it. Keeps everyone on the same page during conference calls, since everyone on the call can see your screen and they can follow along with what you're doing. Everyone on the call is more focused, more interested, more engaged. It's great for sales presentations, product demos, training sessions, collaborating on documents. Gotomeeting can save you from the TSA as well. You don't have to make a choice between the backscatter scanner and the feel up. You can just do your conference call on Gotomeeting. Sign up for a free 30-day trial at gotomeeting.com/twit. Have all of the meetings you want for one low flat rate. Phone and voice over IP and conferencing is included for free. And like I said, free 30-day trial at gotomeeting.com/twit. All right. MacBook Air performs poorly compared with similarly priced Windows laptops. This according to a PC World comparison. They basically said they're always heavier. The Windows machines are always heavier. Go ahead, John. Come on in. Just block the camera. It's not a problem.
I was hoping he was going to see me and switch. I could have done that transparently, but no, that wasn't going to happen.
The MacBook Air, always lighter, often better with battery life. But if you want a more high performance computer, they said you should probably go with a Windows machine. It's just it's going to hurt your back.
Who said this? I missed that.
PC World.
Oh, duh.
Oh, because they're called PC World?
Yeah.
That just means personal computer. And MacBook Air is a personal computer.
Yeah.
How would this not... I would have been absolutely astonished. I would have said, you know what? Apple has turned water into wine if they had come up with another finding than this. Because this has always been... It's an underpowered machine for the price. That's the deal. Like, this isn't a headline. If you pay that much for a Windows machine, hell yeah, you're going to get a smoking machine.
Yeah, that's true. You get twice as much power for the money. But it's beside the point. The MacBook Air is a fantastic product.
It's just a little pricey.
Yeah, but think about the effort that they went. I mean, they grind out a piece of a solid block of aluminum to put this thing. It's very well
packaged. It's not hand chiseled or anything.
It's hand chiseled by
make it sound
slaves.
Like there's like
they chisel it with a saw
like artisans in a thatched roof cottage.
And so they whip them. They whip these people.
If it was thatched, the Foxconn employees couldn't jump off it as easily.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh,
too soon. Thank you, Molly.
I didn't mean that to be harsh.
For
No, that was pretty much just a chance for Tom and I to do a little same brain.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
high five.
For $1,000, Asus U33JC is $300 cheaper than the 13-inch Air and lasts 7+ hours on a single charge. So if you want to find out, go to PC World. You can see all the comparisons they did. You're right. It's not that surprising. How about this? This surprise you? Rear view cameras could become mandatory on cars in the United States.
Mandatory?
Mandatory.
What corruption is involved with this idea?
I don't know what congressperson has a stake in camera makers, but
Somebody.
New vehicles starting in late 2014 under this plan, which received a strong endorsement from the insurance industry, is likely to get some level of support from car manufacturers. At least that's according to the LA Times.
Yeah, because they can charge you another $100.
No, that is absolutely ludicrous. That they would mandate a feature that expensive that causes, and I am sorry, I do not mean to discount the death of anybody as a result of this, but 292 fatalities a year.
Yeah, I mean,
290 for people backing up into somebody.
If you,
hey, grandma,
200.
Boom.
If you know or loved one of the 292 fatalities, you're obviously going to feel different. But from a purely statistical point of view,
the number's zero.
That is a minuscule
It's
number.
nil.
They shouldn't sell
It's
ladders.
ludicrous.
I mean, more people probably I'm guessing fall off of ladders and kill themselves. Because I know falls is one of the top reasons people die.
Yeah, I'm
You
sorry,
guys all
but if they do
travel
not
pretty
mandate,
frequently.
For example, Bluetooth in every car. Like I know someone who just bought a new car, a 2010 model that doesn't come with Bluetooth as an option in California, where it's the law that you have to do hands-free calling. If they don't mandate Bluetooth, if they don't mandate breathalyzers in every single ignition, then they cannot possibly justify mandating this.
She
except for
jumped
what
the
you said, this person-
breathalyzers.
Well, no, the breathalyzers I think is a really good point
I don't
because
want a
more people
breathalyzer
die
in
in
my
drunk
car.
driving accidents than die from backup fatalities. So if
Yeah.
you're going to mandate a backup camera, why wouldn't you mandate a breathalyzer?
I suppose that logic is impeccable.
When you guys travel, have you noticed the last 3 or 4 cars that I've gotten when I've traveled, and friends of mine that have new cars, it seems like the back all slopes up, and it's really hard to see actually. And so I kind of wonder if this is related to that, or if I'm just imagining.
So
it, if I got
you're
the wrong
imagining
cars.
that the designers have a scheme afoot. I don't
think that's what I was imagining, but it does seem like cars are harder to see out backwards now.
Yeah, well, I always get out of the car.
yeah,
when I
that's
when
just
I
a
have to
bad
back up, I
design thing.
stop the car, open the door, get out, look behind it, make sure somebody's not laying there.
It's the
to
only
set
way to
me
be
up.
100% safe.
It works.
This is just what I was able to find from 2008, right? In 2008, 11,773 people died in alcohol-impaired driving crashes, compared to 292 who died by being backed over.
Backed over.
You wouldn't mandate a breathalyzer before.
Well, how about
backup
the people die in the
What
bathtub?
is
Let's do
wrong
something
with
about
this
that.
world?
I think I know. My guess about what's going on here is some insurance actuary noted the amount of savings they could have, probably more for the injuries, because there's 18,000 injuries, if there were a backup camera on every car, and said, you know what, let's try to push for this to be mandated, because then there's fewer payouts that we have to make for injuries.
Let's take another look at this. People are not looking behind their car when they back up, apparently. And what makes you think they're going to be looking at the screen? They're probably just oblivious to the entire world. They're not going to necessarily look at the screen to see what's behind them. It might be out of range. Who knows? And they're going to back up over, somebody laying back there for all you know. This whole thing is a waste of time and money. In fact, I think
If we're going to mandate anything, it should be wireless in public buildings, I think.
Well, that's going to happen.
I like that.
That's going to happen too. Thank you for the transition, Chris.
Good one.
Yeah,
I'm not sure why, but okay.
A bill is being proposed in Congress that would require Wi-Fi base stations in all federal buildings. It's a bipartisan bill. Senator Olympia Snowe, Republican of Maine, and Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia, introduced the legislation on Friday.
And Mark Warner is
Hooray.
really good on broadband generally. And I just want to read the purpose of this, which comes from the bill itself, and that's to install Wi-Fi hotspots and wireless neutral host systems in all federal buildings in order to improve in-building wireless communications coverage and commercial network capacity by offloading wireless traffic onto wireline broadband networks. It strikes me as kind of an odd situation. I mean, I was just thinking about where city halls and public buildings are around Minneapolis, and I just don't see this being all that helpful. And why the federal government is mandating that local governments have to help private companies to manage their traffic is even more sort of confusing to me. I don't really understand the point of this. Although, quite honestly, having more open Wi-Fi for people to use is certainly a good thing.
So you're against it?
It really strikes me as being unnecessary.
Well, it sounds like you don't think we'd get the benefit from it because there's just not enough federal buildings that would warrant this. Because it's only the federal buildings that would require to be retrofitted by 2014.
I think that's exactly why. Yeah,
the bill's sponsored by Cisco.
What possible purpose would this have that it warrants a law?
It's like
I read it and I didn't even listen to it, but you're right. It's only the federal buildings, which there's even fewer of.
Can you get the signal outside the building? That's what I like to know. So you can drive up.
Well, they put it in the basement. So yeah, probably. That's what it says.
Well, how's it going to radiate north?
Well, it goes up pretty easily, and then
these are pretty big buildings. Yeah. They would have to have multiple access
you better
points.
Have a bunch of
to make it any good, repeaters. Right? I mean, you have to have multiple access points to spread it around. I don't know if this calls for that or not.
I still don't understand the purpose of it being to help commercial carriers. I mean, it just seems to, if it's good public policy for people to have better access to internet when they're in federal buildings, then let's do it. But to throw that in just confuses me.
So are we going to get WiMAX apparently in the next few weeks in the Bay Area?
Yes.
Are you going to try it? We're going to try it? We're going to get a copy
I have
of it?
a Sprint Overdrive that uses WiMAX, and I've used it in Atlanta, and it worked great. So I'm curious if it's going to work here.
I got to talk to you. You have the Sprint PR person? I got to discuss this. This is like important to me because I used to have.
I bought the Sprint Overdrive. I don't have a PR contact.
So groan.
Look at him horrified.
So it's like I'm horrified. I'm horrified. No, it's because I used to have Sprint Broadband Direct, which was about 10 years ago or more.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
And they canceled it, saying, oh, we're going to they grandfathered a few people in, and the next thing you know, they said, don't worry, we got a million technologies we're going to replace it with. 10 years goes by, and they have nothing, and so now they're bringing this thing out, and I'm wondering, it's about time. And I want to check it out because it seems to me that once you standardize on one technology with WiMAX, which is problematic because all the technologies, none of them work together. But Clearwire is doing all of them, so it might actually work. Long story short,
I'd really like to hear what Tom's experience was and how good it was, because I'm guessing your Comcast connection is going to be superior to anything you're going to get from WiMAX.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm comparing the Sprint Overdrive to the Verizon MiFi. The Verizon MiFi only does 3G. The Sprint Overdrive did WiMAX in Atlanta, and it was excellent. It worked really well. Unless I was deep inside a building. And then the WiMAX's problem penetrating buildings started to show up, and it would switch to 3G a lot of the time. But most of the time, that wasn't an issue.
Everybody I've talked to in Portland that uses it, it's one of the first cities they implemented it, they say it's fantastic.
Yeah.
No, actually, I have a different experience. A friend of mine who's in Portland was disappointed to find out that they can't get it because they're on the wrong side of a hill.
Well, that's a bad experience, I would agree.
There's some gaps, but I did some research on this recently, and they have the two plans, one of which I believe is like a gigabit down and half a gigabit up. I'm sorry. That would be incredible. A megabit down and half a megabit up.
That would be good.
That would actually be 4G if it was, or even 5G.
The guy in Portland in the chat room says it sucks in Portland, but again, it might be where you're located.
It probably is.
Right, but when I looked at it, then they have an unlimited plan, and from what I could tell, sort of averaging responses on message boards and whatnot, it looks like the best people do is about 5 megabits a second sustained, and that can be terrific for a handheld device, but I don't see that replacing a wired connection. And fundamentally, I mean, we have 4G Verizon LTE coming out today, I believe, and I think there's just all this hype around wireless.
4G. It's not technically 4G, and I resent the fact
I think
it's 4G-ish.
It's 4G.
Okay, but to be fair, the technical specification for 4G actually came out after the marketing term had been in widespread use, so they can still get to call it that.
They can call it whatever they want.
They can call it whatever they want.
It's not a trademark thing. You can call it 5G.
That's how T-Mobile gets away with calling their HSDPA Plus or HSPA Plus 4G.
But LTE is like, I'm on the other side.
4G-er.
I'm on the other side of this debate, which is that, by the way, WiMAX in Japan has up to 300 megabits per second, called WiMAX 2.
That's 4G.
It's
For how many people on the tower?
But the point
Not
is that I'm not convinced that these cell phone technologies that run, LTE and all the rest of them that came before it, they always run out of bandwidth. They crap out. They have all these issues. It's not really the cell phone network, the mobile network's never been equipped for data. It doesn't like it. I don't know. I'm not taking that side of the equation anytime
No, that's
soon.
exactly right. I mean, wireless and wired networks aren't substitutes; they're complements. And wireless is terrific for a lot of things, but it's not a substitute. And the idea that we're going to solve our rural broadband problems with 4G, just to go off on a tangent because I can, is absurd for the reasons that you just mentioned. Wireless is just not going to. Our future is wired and wireless.
All right, couple stories to finish us off here. A Texas man, Aaron Embry, told a local Fox News affiliate he had heard a popping noise while using his Droid 2 and then looked down to find blood dripping from his ear. The glass...
That happens to me a lot.
The glass had broken. The battery, I guess, maybe exploded and cut him. Now, he says, I felt something dripping. I realized that it was probably blood. I went into the house, and as I got into the bathroom, and once I got to the mirror, I saw it. I was only then I kind of looked at my phone and noticed the screen had appeared to burst outward. So he took some pictures of it in case he had a legal case and then went to the hospital.
Yeah, well, that's a new version of
The thing that I like
Tooted
about it,
Ahead.
actually, is that he says it still works perfectly.
Yeah, well, he finished the call. He heard the popping noise, wondered what was that, finished the call, and it wasn't until he was done with the call that he noticed the blood.
This is the problem with cell phones. The guy's bleeding to death, and he can't get off the phone. Give me a break.
Wouldn't happen with Windows Phone. I've seen the commercials. Get you back in life quicker.
Yeah, that's a. Yeah.
They should do that. They should
have you got one of those phones, by the way?
No, I haven't. But they should have a commercial where even if your ear starts bleeding, you'll get back into life quicker.
Yeah.
Actually, we don't explode and cut your ear.
Exploding phones.
I think,
by the way, years and years ago, the Detroit Metropolitan Police had this idea of distributing Motorola phones. They tried to do this with Motorola. It's never happened, by the way. To put a small bomb in the phone that went to drug dealers, and they could track these guys down and just blow their heads off.
No, they did that with Hamas leader. Israel did that with a phone a number of years ago.
Successfully. Exactly. I think that happened.
Well, okay. Well, I guess it was the one time it happened. But it could happen. I don't
you
trust
thought it was
phones.
just a conspiracy theory. Here it was true.
Yeah, well,
That's
this is why I only buy disposable phones.
Yeah, if you get a phone in the mail, John, don't answer it.
That's why they called them burners.
Yeah.
Finally, the Food Tubes group wants to put goods, mostly food, but some other goods, in metal capsules 2 meters long, which would then be shifted through underground polyethylene tubes at speeds of up to 60 miles per hour, directed by linear induction motors, in a way to cut costs for delivering goods, especially food, to government buildings and supermarkets.
What?
That's freaking awesome.
Okay.
And they want to use internet packet switching technology to help them guide the metal capsules.
Now, what are you reading? Is this like popular science from the 30s?
But they're really packets.
You have to name it after Ted Stevens.
It's E-Week.
You have to name it after him. He came up with the tubes. It was his idea. He deserves the credit.
Well, there you go. He was ahead of his time.
You know what this is? This is just, I mean, who has not? Well, okay, if you didn't ever grow up in like a cold state, you haven't seen this. But if you go, they had drive-through banks and the pneumatic tubes.
Yeah, they still have
right.
They don't. They still have them.
It gets sucked up. That is a genius idea for transporting. I don't know, wheat bundles.
Yeah.
Okay, it's crazy, but I like it.
I think it is crazy. Molly's right. But at the same time, then you read further in the article, and it's something that I occasionally think about, which is the energy you put into a vehicle, the energy that vehicle uses to move you, like 98% of that energy is wasted, right? Because you weigh 100 pounds, the vehicle weighs, I'm sorry, you weigh 200 pounds if you're me. The vehicle weighs 2,000 pounds, a lot more probably. There's just so much energy that's wasted. And so the idea of installing these tubes once and then not having to run trucks everywhere, actually, you can imagine if it's a long-term investment, it could seriously pay off, I can imagine.
They say it would cost £400 million to build it in Croydon, a borough of London, and they estimate it would make £80 million a year.
Yeah, the first thing that would happen, somebody would stuff their brother in the thing, and off it goes.
Could use it as a people mover.
Yeah, people mover.
Dude, you have issues. Really? Your brother?
Well,
what do you want to talk about? How do you feel about your mom?
In she goes. She ends up in Croydon.
Lightweight capsules, which are roughly the same size as the cages that are carried by supermarket lorries, those are trucks in the UK, would be moved by an electromagnetic kick from linear induction motors and connect supermarkets, schools, and other major buildings.
Yeah.
Let's just hope it's
Where'd you get
standardized
this? I
so
mean,
we don't
this
have
thing-
different size
How
tubes
is that
in
different from
different
moving
places.
like maglev trains or something? I mean, if we're going to move to energy efficient transportation, why does it have to be underground? That seems like actually more inefficient. Like you could just, if we all got to maglev or we all got to natural gas vehicles or we all got to, totally electric or even using maybe the same exact power. Like why does it have to be a buried grid?
Yeah. See the movie
That's
Brazil.
weird.
Somebody mentioned.
Just keeps it out of the way. Doesn't take up the road space, so you can drive your inefficient Tesla Motors car.
Maybe better
Gun
in
it.
areas with less seismic activity.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to be doing this in San Francisco area anytime soon.
Probably not. No.
But I love the idea of a fooder net.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
The feeder
okay.
net. Oh, that's
Feeder
awesome.
net.
All it really
Feeder
is
net.
fodder for a good sci-fi novel.
Fooder.
I
Fooder.
hope broadband is considered a utility before these tubes of food and packages.
The only thing
And
that gets me
you
is
have to measure the size of these containers in megabytes. Thank you, Slacker.
I don't know. Packet switch technology works because you can error correct for lost packets. Doesn't work so well with this.
Yeah, they're, hey,
Like,
I'm
drop
missing a
packet,
loaf of bread.
resend, it could be expensive.
Yeah.
Did you do the
Seriously, the packet switch jokes
check
alone
some on
are
the
endless.
bread?
All right. Radio Shack is offering an Apple iPhone 4 for as little as $25. That's if you trade in your old iPhone 3GS. Nice discount. Best Buy, by the way, is giving a free phone, mostly Android phones, every day with contract. Bunch of deals going on all this month. In fact, a good way to find out deals would be to watch Mollywood on CNET, would it not?
You got deals,
That's
Molly?
right.
Hey,
It's
Kmart.
holiday help desk season, actually, which we're doing every Monday.
I do so
at
miss
1
it.
p.m. Pacific.
Kmart.
I'm sure you do.
Kmart has got a deal this weekend, which I just want to mention. I didn't go buy one, but I was tempted to, for $450, only because of the nature of this thing. $450, a 42-inch plasma from Panasonic. $450, and I'm thinking because I'm looking at that thing, and the first plasmas that
Panasonic,
came,
too.
the first, well, they're the only ones still doing them, as far as I can tell. But anyway, I remember seeing the first plasma at a Comdeck show or CES, one of the two, and it was 42 inches. That was the original. $10,000.
So the prices come down a bit.
A little bit, yeah. $450, $10,000. I'm thinking,
That's the way it goes.
Anyways, we'll have all those deals just like that at the holiday help desk.
Oh.
And shopper.cnet.com.
By the way, somebody mentions it's 720p for this thing. I want to say something. Panasonic studied this to death, and they determined that anything below 50 inches, and 50 inches too, you could not tell from a distance of more than 3 feet whether it was 720p or 1080p. You could not visually tell the difference at that size.
Most people can't. There are those with 2010 vision.
Well, I don't know, maybe, but Panasonic studied it to death. Of course, it could be BS too. That's just,
All right. Well, thank you, you guys, for helping out today. Fill in for Leo. It was a great show, Mollywood. You've got your one plug in, but I'll give you a second one since you got interrupted by Panasonic deals.
I'll take that was a pretty good plug. You did all the other plug-in at the beginning of the show.
You guys are plugging each other too much.
Find don't say it like that. Find Mollywood at cnet.com. Buzz
See?
out
Now
loud
it's
every
weird.
day. Chris Mitchell, thank you for being with us as well. And let folks know where they can find what you do online.
Sure. I'm actually, I think, setting a record. I came in with about 160 Twitter followers at Community Nets, and we'll see how that goes. I'm guessing it'll be far higher than I would have gotten on my own.
And
then
your organization works on municipal internet, right?
Right. So we're the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. We're a profit. I work on community broadband. So anything that's co-ops, nonprofit, municipal ownership. The point is that the network should be focused on community needs rather than profits. And so there's also other focuses of the Institute, which you can find at ilsr.org for the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. But all their telecom work really happens at muninetworks.org, where I write about networks like the 1 gigabit per second Chattanooga network and other community networks networks that are doing fascinating things to push forward in ways that the private carriers are a little bit slow to do sometimes.
Well, Chris, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. And, of course, John C. Dvorak, a pleasure as always.
Always a pleasure to be here, especially with the great Tom Merritt. Ladies and we're not in front of an audience. Never mind.
Well, no, we do have
we have one guy he can clap. Yeah. But with anyway, channeldvorak.com to see what I'm up to, and you can check out my other stuff while you're there.
And don't forget, we're trying to put together the best moments of TWiT all year long. Go to twit.tv/bestof. Look up the video and give us the time code and name the moment for us. We're going to put that together as a special at the end of the year. So we appreciate your help with that. Another TWiT is now inside of a can.